And now I really would like us all to greet Joy Metzler, who we know has filed for conscientious objector status, was successful from the Air Force Academy, and she can tell her story much better than I can. But it's wonderful to have Joy with us today.
And Susan, you just conscientiously objected without even going through the paperwork. You just did it.
I just did it, but yeah, but Joy, yeah. And is a member of Veterans for Peace, so that ought to bring you all into the park.
Yeah, so I'm actually here with Mike's slides. I have no idea how to get them up on the TV, and I'm not gonna mess with
The slides like 5 minutes ago, so I probably remember what's on them, but, so this is important information for like anybody in your families who might be active duty, or any friends who might be active duty. To understand what conscientious objection is, because there's a lot of misconceptions about it from the Vietnam War era. The legal definition as it stands right now in the regulations of a conscientious objector is someone who opposes to war in all forms. So it's a pretty broad definition. So depending on how you define a couple of things within that definition, you can actually qualify as a conscientious objector. What Mike really wanted to point out was that some of the common misconceptions about COs today is that first that it has to be religious. That is how COs started, was as a religious designation for someone who was opposed to war because of religious objections, but that's not the case anymore. It can be deeply held moral convictions as well as religious convictions as well. Unfortunately, they do still make you talk to a chaplain, just as like a remnant of what COs used to be, but you do not have to be religious at all. In fact, most of the people I have talked to who have gotten out as COs were not religious at all. Another common conception or misconception is that it's a bad discharge, but if you apply and get out as a conscientious objection, you actually get an honorable discharge, specifically, which does still make you eligible for VA benefits afterwards, with a couple of differences here and there depending on situation. Some other misconceptions, a lot of people still associate pacifism with conscientious objection, which is not, it doesn't say you have to be against like force. So for instance, one of the application questions you might be asked is what would you do if somebody broke into your house and held your family at gunpoint? You do not have to say you would let your family be shot to become a conscientious objector. I'm personally not a pacifist. I maybe was a pacifist for like a week, and then I was like, that's not really for me. So I'm not a pacifist, and I really wasn't a pacifist when I went through my application either. As long as you work well to explain how your beliefs around the use of force, how your beliefs around the use of violence do not conflict with, again, the regulation definition, which is that being against war in all its forms, not necessarily the use of violence in all of its forms. You just have to explain how your views align with that definition as it is written out in the, oh yeah, here it is. That's good, because I was running out of misconceptions. That's close enough. So we can just hit the arrows, probably. Cool, okay. I'm with the CCW today, apparently. So there it is, lifted directly from the DOTI. I guess it's a DOWI now with the name change. Opposition to participating in any form of war due to sincerely held morals, ethical, or religious beliefs, or a combination of such beliefs. I was a combination. Again, you do not have to be religious. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay. Cool. All right, so I got about half of them. Specific wars. So actually, COs technically, legally speaking, cannot be against a single specific war. It has to be war in all forms. However, what is common is that a lot of people will experience their crystallization point where they realize, I am actually against wars because of their experience in a specific war. So for me, I specifically talked about Gaza in my conscientious objection application, but my opposition to US intervention in Gaza, my opposition to US wars in the Middle East alone would not have been sufficient for me to be a conscientious objector. But instead I used that moment in time as a way to explain how my anti-war beliefs started crystallizing. Must be religious, we covered that. Bad discharge, covered that. Hard to approve. So you might hear a lot that conscientious objection applications don't get approved a lot because what the military will kind of do is they won't count the people who start their applications and then don't continue with them. And so it sounds like there's a really low number of applications that are approved. But the reality is that most of the applications that get pushed through do get approved. There's only like a few, the times when applications don't get approved is when individuals do not go through organizations like the CCW or like the GI Rights Hotline, and they just try and submit it by themselves. That's normally when those applications fail. There's other very rare instances where even an application helped out with the CCW is going to fail as well. But the CCW helps do the appeals. They help figure out exactly what the reason is for that application being denied, and they'll do repeat appeals, which are also pretty successful. So they're really not hard to approve. They're more long.
Slow, exactly.
Slow. And one of the main reasons people tend to abandon their CO applications is because of the length of time. I was applying around the same time as a couple of other friends of mine, and I was the only one who actually finished with the application process. One of them actually just kind of stopped showing up to work. It is valid. It is a legitimate way of getting out of the military. And the other one ended up getting out from an admin discharge because he kept causing trouble. Because he was getting sick of his CO application sitting in purgatory. Multiple different ways to get out of the military. A lot of people end up taking other routes just because they're faster. I know other people who've gotten like medical discharges because obviously if you're going through as a CO, you probably have significant mental health impacts as well. So I know a lot of people have gotten out from medical discharges as well. But the approval rate, the success rate of the CCW and other such organizations is actually very high. And then we hit the pacifism one. Cool. So I was like 3 for 5 there. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so the timeline. Mine was about 8 months long. And I had to go through 2 chains of command. So that was actually incredibly fast. They did not want me in the military for much longer. But for most people, it's going to take around 6 months to a year. And the reason for that being so spread out is because people don't really know what to do with CO applications. So it might sit with your leadership for like a month and then be in upper leadership purgatory for about a year. Or it might sit with your leadership for about 6 months because they don't know what to do with it, and then it'll get sent up within like a month. According to the regulations, each person who reviews it has 3 days to send it up, but as we all know, those regulations are suggestions to the military. But during this time, so here's what I was kind of talking about. Sometimes command will opt for a faster separation than the CO process. So that's like these people getting out in different ways. Obviously, command's not going to try and retain somebody who's not showing up to work anymore. So some people do actually end up getting out in other easier, more well-known ways, more normal processes. During the time that you have a CO application in, your beliefs do have to be accommodated. So for instance, if you were a pilot, like a fighter pilot or something like that, and you submitted a CO application, theoretically, or according to the regulations, you would probably be grounded, just because if your beliefs are conflicting with your role as a fighter pilot, it's better for you and it's better for the military if you are not still continuing on in that position. So for me, I was actually technically supposed to be at the Air Force Technical Applications Center, which is nuclear treaty verification in Patrick Air Force Base. And I sat in on one introductory session and I was like, I don't want to be here. And they didn't have me working there anyway. So they sent me to the little building with the weird Space Force people and the 3D printers, which was cool. I didn't have to wear a uniform to work every single day because the senior master sergeant didn't want to wear a uniform. So he didn't make anyone else wear a uniform. So that was pretty cool. That was an example of leadership doing a pretty good job at being accommodating. But again, the other reason to go through an organization when you're applying as CO is because they can also be your advocate. Because I also know of other people who applied as COs right before deployment, and this is also another common time when people apply is right before deployments, and this individual still got sent on deployment. So there are times where we might want to work a little bit faster on getting that application out because somebody is in immediate danger of being sent somewhere where they're going to be asked to violate their conscience. Next slide, please. Application. The application has quite a few different steps. So the initial draft, it's a lot. There's 6 different questions, which we'll get into in like some of the further on slides. Each branch has their own idiosyncrasies, but for the most part, it's all pretty standardized as far as what you answer. So you're gonna go through your initial draft. If you're me, you're gonna do about 20 different revisions before the counselor says that you can send it in. My application was about 17 pages long. It is a lot. It is a very heavy lift, especially for people who don't enjoy writing. Another reason to have a counselor, because for some people, if they're just sending in like 5 paragraphs for their CO application, they're probably gonna get denied because you're not including enough information. Really, that's just it, you have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt to multiple different individuals that your beliefs started forming after you joined the military. Because if you can't prove that, they're going to be like, well, why did you join the military if you had these beliefs? And then they're going to red stamp your application. You can also submit support letters. It's not required, but I had a few old professors, I had family members write support letters for me that just kind of explained from like an outside perspective of how being in the military and really coming to these beliefs has shaped and changed the individual applying. So those can be helpful as well. Submission, obviously, you submit it to the appropriate party, which could really honestly be anyone. Typically it is your frontline supervisor, so anyone who's in the military knows what that means, basically the next person in your chain of command, and then it's their problem to deal with. So I ended up submitting it to, I don't know if anyone in my chain of command really knew who to submit it to, so it kind of went to everybody at the same time, which is fine. Next slide, please. So that's the application, the written application itself. So that already is like a few months long. The second part of it is interviews. So basically you're going to go to a bunch of people and you're going to explain to them exactly what you put in your 20-page long application. You're going to get asked the same questions. You're going to get really tired about talking about it, and then you're going to have to do it again. So you still do have to talk to a chaplain. Again, more likely than not a remnant of when these applications were religious-based. They're just gonna make sure that they think that you're telling the truth and not trying to get out of something or whatever. Mental health, the written reason for going to mental health is that they wanna make sure that another discharge isn't more appropriate for you. I don't know, my mental health provider, when I met with them, they were like, I don't know why you're here, and I was like, I also don't know why I'm here. So we just kind of chatted a little bit, and they were like, yeah, you're probably not lying. So These interviews are gonna feel very redundant, but actually that's what you want, is you want them to feel redundant, because that means that you have a pretty watertight story and you understand how you came to become a conscientious objector, which is really what you need in order to have the highest likelihood of success of getting your application approved. Next slide, please. It's my favorite picture. It's also my favorite picture. So the IO hearing, basically it is the same exact thing as the other interviews, but this one is more of a legal hearing. So everything that you've explained to the chaplain, everything that you've explained to the mental health professional, this guy is, or gal, I guess, is the person who is going to be making the final recommendation on whether your application should be approved or not approved.
What does IO mean?
Investigating officer. It does not necessarily need to be like an actual officer, but it does need to be someone ahead of you in rank. Sometimes it's actually a lawyer. Oftentimes in the Air Force at least, it's going to be a judge advocate general, so like the military version of a lawyer. Basically, you treat it as like an actual legal hearing, so you don't have to do it alone. Counselors will go with you. For me, my lawyer, James Branham, who is also very experienced in this stuff, accompanied me, took a transcript, make sure the IO doesn't like try and ask any trick questions or bully you into saying something wrong. You're gonna be presenting evidence. Again, it's like a hearing. You're gonna present evidence. This is why I turned out the way I did. You can have witnesses with you so that this person doesn't try and bully you into. Most of the times they're pretty cool, but it was not pretty cool in the past, especially in some of the other branches where you might not get experienced legal counsel. You might just get a rando that they pulled in off the streets. Sometimes they cannot fully understand the role, and they'll try and hit you with the, well, what would you have done during World War II? That's one of the very common questions. You're not supposed to answer that. Or you're supposed to say, I wouldn't have actually fought. I'm not here to talk about that, you know. That's something the CCW would go over with you with. But they try and get into like the moral quandaries of like large political conflicts, and that's not a fair thing for the IO to do because they're there to talk about you and your beliefs. But for the most part, the IOs are pretty good because they understand, again, like I said, it is akin to a legal proceeding. Next slide, please. So some of the questions you're gonna, I thought it was 6. It definitely is 6, but I can't remember what the 6th one is. So first you're gonna state your beliefs as they are presently, what you believe in the moment. Second, you're gonna talk about the source of your beliefs. So if it's religious, what part of your religion is this coming from? Are you Buddhist? Do you not believe in taking other people's life? Are you Christian? Do you not believe in, do you follow Jesus? Blah, 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 blah. If it's a moral belief, you're gonna say where that came from. Where did you come up with this moral belief? The third, your moment of crystallization. So the point where you realize that you actually cannot continue serving in the military. For me, it was that point where the weight of the consequences I would experience for applying as a CO no longer outweighed my like immediate need for my own health and other reasons to get out of the military. For other people, it's a lot more sharp and distinct. For a lot of people, the common one you'll hear is that when I first shot a gun for the first time, I realized that I can't do this anymore. It's a very distinct point of crystallization. You're gonna talk about your beliefs on use of force. If an armed gunman shows up in your house, you don't have to say that I'm just gonna let them kill my entire family, but you do have to explain how those beliefs don't conflict with your opposition to war in all forms. Another example that was used for me is that technically if somebody was standing in front of a bus and you push them out of the way, that's a use of force, and you can be okay with that. You just have to explain it. And for a lot of people, they might try and get into this like whole tirade about, you know, philosophical debates about when or when not to use violence, and that's not the point of this, and that's why you really should go through an organization. I tried getting into like a bunch of nitty-gritties around like just war theory, and my counselor was like, don't do that. Like, just talk about yourself. You can talk about it somewhere else, but not here. And 5, how you live your beliefs. So basically, what in your life has changed in how you are now demonstrating these beliefs? If you became a Christian while you're in the military, are you now going to church? Do you start participating in anti-war organizations like Veterans for Peace? Do you write a lot of op-eds that make your leadership angry at you, but they can't do anything to you because you're still well within your rights? Maybe. Next slide, please. So the very bottom line of it is that nobody should be forced to violate their conscience. A lot of people, when they think about conscientious objection, there's a lot of initial like misconceptions about, oh, this person's a coward, they're just trying to get out of like the military, you know, they shouldn't have joined in the first place. But at the end of the day, what a lot of people don't talk about is, why are we forcing somebody who doesn't want to be in the military to continue serving? Like, it's detrimental to the people around them, and it's detrimental to that person themselves. And, you know, on a larger level, you can even argue that like forcing people to serve in the military is detrimental to humanity in general. So that's what the CCW is here to like underline, is that there is no reason to make somebody experience long-lasting emotional damage or mental health issues like moral injury. We don't need to be forcing people to experience that. And this is a valid and legislatively protected way to get out of the military. It's something that COs for decades, all the way back to World War I, have been fighting for the right to do. Because at the end of the day, again, nobody should be forced to violate their conscience. And that's not a big political statement either. It doesn't, you don't have to be a leftist, you don't have to be on this side of the whatever political spectrum. It's a right to not do something you think is wrong. If you don't qualify as a CO, so obviously I just yapped on along about how the CO process is very long, very tricky to navigate, and a lot of people don't end up even sticking with it. So if you don't qualify as a CO, there are also other things and other options that you can explore, which the CCW can help you explore. Next slide, please. There's a multitude of them. From flushing a shirt down your aircraft carrier's toilet to
Yes, which has been done recently.
VFP does not condone such actions, but if you do, you will be lauded as a hero. You can also just stop showing up to work, like some of my friends did. If you don't do it publicly, they might mail you an honorable discharge in the mail. One of my friends who was in the Army was actually doing the paperwork for people who had just like disappeared. And they just kind of send it to your, I mean, like, they'll like bother you for a little bit, but after a time, like, they don't have the resources to hunt down private so-and-so over here who decided to run off to Canada. Like, they just don't. So they might just send you your honorable discharge in the mail. Great, perfect. There's, like I said, there's other different types of discharge. There's admin discharges for certain enlisted people who, you know, maybe directly after basic training are like, what was that? I don't want to do this. There's certain types of failure to, it's not assimilate,
Adjust, I think.
failure to adjust
Yeah.
Discharges. So like there's a lot of different avenues to getting out of the military. Obviously they're not heavily advertised because the military doesn't want people leaving, but you know who does know about them? It's the CCW. So you should call, follow them on Instagram and Twitter, or go to their website, or email them, or you can talk to us. We know a great deal, many people in the CCW, of who I am an honorary member for today.
Questions, comments?
Thank you. I just want to add that there are 3 handouts in the back of the room from the Center on Conscience and War about how to establish oneself as a conscientious objector, and what if you're already in the active military, in particular about to be deployed to fight the war against Iran, and then another more generic one with all of the resources they have. So please grab those for anyone you know, particularly between the ages of 18 and 25 who's male.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about, you went to the Air Force Academy, and at what point did you feel like this isn't for me?
I think it was less that my decision was less based off of this wasn't for me, because I actually adjusted really well to military life. It was more that what I had learned at the academy, like international law and upholding justice and all that kind of stuff, the dissonance while I was watching that being broken with impunity overseas was what really caused me to question what I was actually doing in the military. And it was a very logical, this isn't what I thought this isn't what I thought we were doing, and I'm not going to be part of it as well. So that was kind of how my decision really crystallized.
Thank you.
Yes.
Did the chain of command retaliate in any overt or covert ways?
So my chain of command was pretty good. Mostly you'll kind of see most chains of commands don't retaliate because, it's, again, like a legally protected right. So if they do retaliate, that can result in legal action. For me, the most retaliation I experienced was when my security forces got mad about me publishing op-eds. But I think my leadership knew I was kind of looking for a fight, so they got security forces off my back. But yeah, they tried investigating me about a week out from when I was supposed to actually separate from the military, and put a stop order on me, which would have prevented me from separating from the military. And my leadership was like, can you please not do this? We all want her gone. So yeah, that was the most retaliation I ever got. I can theorize about if there was other retaliation for me being public about my decision, but for solely being a conscientious objector, no. And legally speaking, there cannot be retaliation for that. In the past, a lot more. Like you'll talk with some CEOs and they'll have horror stories about what their command made them do, but these days it's a lot less common.
Can I say very briefly, I had a slightly different experience of going to West Point after being a GI in Vietnam. But it was while I was there that I realized these pieces don't fit together. I will not go back again as a platoon leader in charge of a platoon after, if I stay with the program at West Point. And I had the option of going back on active duty, which I did, because I preferred being on the regular Army in an infantry unit than being at West Point. I had no idea there was such a thing as a CEO. So I had to figure out how to weave my way through the military.
Thank you. I just need to mention, for those of you who don't know Jan Berry, who spent, was it 61, Jan? It was very early when you, okay, I was close. 62, served in Vietnam, and was one of the founders of Vietnam Veterans Against the War. So a very long, I'm sorry, thank you. Usually I'm louder. I didn't want to stop Joy. Okay, but I just want to introduce you all. Jan Berry, for those of you who don't know him, is a longtime activist and a founder of Vietnam Veterans Against the War. And very much an activist, certainly brought attention for years about the issue of Agent Orange dioxin, the contamination in Vietnam and the impact on troops here. I feel like I followed Jan for years. Not that much though, not that much. Any other questions for Joy? Yes.
Well, I just have one question, because I didn't look at all the material on the back table. Is there information today about getting CO status before you're in the military?
Before. I think that's right, and that's what
There-
Susan was
yeah.
talking about, that's on the table. There's also, there's a bunch of literature there. One is how to, other things, excuses that you can use for getting out of the military that are not just CO, that are for military folks. And then there's also literature there about, we have, as you know, Veterans for Peace has a campaign about don't obey illegal, immoral, unjust orders. And we thought that it would be important to talk about the illegal criminal wars that this country's perpetrating all over the world. So there is also information there. And Nick, you're gonna add to that.
I just want to ask a question.
Sure.
I want to ask, what moment, what caused you to say, I gotta get out of here? And what was the hardest thing for you in, going through this process?
So the crystallization point for me was, watching us continue to support, to continue supporting Gaza, the war crimes in Gaza with impunity. I don't think that mic is on.
They are.
And then so that was my point of crystallization, was Gaza, in the shortest way possible. The hardest part, I think, was kind of just waiting, cause like I said, my application took 8 months. So after, this mad rush to get my application in, just sitting around, not sure where it is, somewhere up in the purgatory of upper echelons of leadership. The only reason I had any idea where it ended up going was because I had to submit a Freedom of Information Act request, and that was just because I was impatient. But yeah, it passed through quite a few hands, some of whom I don't feel like needed to see it, but that's just how it is. And then it goes up to some board, and the board makes a decision. So yeah, that was the hardest
Did you
part.
get badgered while you were waiting?
Not really. No, my leadership was good about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm wondering if you experienced any retaliatory behavior from your fellow enlisters?
No,
No?
not really. They kind of stayed away from the subject.
But they weren't angry with you for becoming a conscientious objector?
Yeah, if they were, they didn't tell me.
Yeah. Do you
So-
think it might be different for somebody who's on the front lines in active duty or stationed, abroad?
It definitely is possible. I have heard stories from people who've mentioned that. So.
Let me just add a little bit about establishing your CO status before you're dealing with the military. Very hard, because of what's looming in December, of it's supposedly gonna all be automatic, because everybody's info is electronically available these days. Used to be a young person, a teenager, through their church if they're religious, or just personally, could and they still should do it, because it's good evidence whenever it becomes necessary. Establish a file, I've been to this war demo, I've talked to this, whatever they have done all through their lives, especially their teen years, so that they have that documentation already before it even becomes an issue. But unfortunately, with the automatic registration, they can't get anything in there until and unless a draft gets instituted. And we'll see about that. Since Vietnam, they've been very afraid of an active draft, and thank goodness. But with Trump and gang, who knows? But having that file already existing is a big step forward.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking of my grandson.
Exactly.
Who's 22 years old.
Yeah.
Just graduated from college, so, and my daughter told me that at some point in high school, he had to sign a paper that automatically registered him.
Right.
With that, so that's already happened with him.
And that's
What's
great.
this new thing happening?
That's my point, is that you used to could do that because it was paperwork. A young man had to go in and, give their name, and now it's gonna be automatic. So you can't just put it in there with them cleaning whatever is
Okay,
electronically
but
available.
he didn't really have any choice, he had to do it. They told him he had to do it, so he didn't.
Right, the registration is legally required. A lot of states will let you get a driver's license or school funding, blah, blah, blah.
But now you don't even have to do it
Right.
yourself.
Exactly, it's just
Yes.
going to happen.
Right.
And you can't insert anything into that automatic gleaning. But having the file, whatever you've collected, whatever you've done as a teenager, in school, in church, and wherever, is very valuable for if and when they do implement a draft
Okay,
account.
okay, great.
Charlotte, thank you guys,
Thank you. And any other questions for Joy?
No.
And thank you
Can I
all.
just say something before Ali Fine and Dr. Fine leaves?
Yeah.
If you're
Please.
leaving?
He's
Yeah.
leaving.
When we were in college, he supported our sit-in at the University of Chicago when we got suspended and expelled. Way back in the 70s, in the 60s, I'm sorry, in the
Yes,
60s. Thank you.
Peace, right on, thank you, thank you.
So thank you. We're going, as usual, we're a little bit behind time, but first, I just want to thank Joy.
Sure.
Yes.
If I could ask a super quick favor, if you have a little bit of financial flexibility, there is a family in Gaza that I support. If you go to bit.ly/MAJDI_E, bit.ly/
Better write that out.
Magic_E, it's being recorded. If you can go and donate to his campaign, I would be much appreciated. Water, fill-ups have risen to $200, food is exorbitantly high. I'm sure you all know that. Oh, bit.ly/MAJDI, yeah, _E. And if that doesn't work, just come find me and I can fix it. But that doesn't look like it's spelled right, but I don't know. Yeah, so if you could donate to his campaign, just like a $5 or whatever you're able to, it would be much appreciated.
Or maybe we could collect it here and then figure out how to send it.
Yeah, that
That
also
might be the
would
easiest
work
bet.
too, however it may. It should take you to a chuffed campaign. If it takes you anywhere else, it's not it.